So we're gonna do a restorative practice today and wrapping up February. So just go into your dominant cross-legged position and take a few moments to quietly settle your body, settle your brain, and give yourself just some time to connect with the physical feeling, the sensations you have this morning, the mental activity, the emotional body. And join your hands when you're ready in front of your heart. Drop your shoulders, looking toward the cheeks without lowering the chin. I'm starting to witness your breathing. Using sensory information to plant yourself in presence, awareness of your breath to align with presence. And that third portal to presence, which is accepting whatever the circumstances are, the unique set of circumstances in your life as they are right now. We're going to call that the weather. And this practice is just about rising above the weather to that more spacious version or experience of ourselves, where we're not identified with all the goings on in our lives. I'm just holding for a couple more moments. I'll just start us off with a reading. Consider all the pain and all the pleasure you have ever experienced as waves on a very deep ocean, which you are. From the depths, witness those waves rolling along so bravely, always changing, beautiful in their self-sustaining power. Marvel that once you identified with only the surface of this ocean. Now embrace waves, depths, undersea mountains, out to the farthest shore. So let's bow towards our own hearts. Release your hands. Lift your head. And as you let your eyes come open, just reminding ourselves here to keep attention drawn inside and welcome. We're going to start in Anatasana, heart chakra pose. Anahata in Sanskrit means unstruck place. So we're going to kind of melt the heart toward the floor using gravity from a kneeling position. And you're going to use your own forearm. We'll start with the right forearm as a resting point for your forehead, and the left arm can be extended forward. And if your shoulder bothers you, just soften the left elbow. Don't try to fully extend the arm. And attempt to put your hips right above your knees. And this practice really is not about striving as much as it is about setting the body in positions where an opening is really the only choice. So as you have set up the pose, just allowing the shape of the pose and breath to kind of take over and feel that unstruck place starting to melt toward the floor, starting to open, feeling the back body sinking toward the front body. And employing the wise actions, but only to the point that you need. Try to give yourself some mental rest throughout this practice, really finding the quietest version of these poses that you can. And just 3 more breaths with this right arm crossing under the forehead before we switch. And then gently and quietly transition to the left forearm underneath the forehead, the right arm extended forward as straight as you can make it without any pain. And 3 more deep breaths, letting those exhales really finish off, go to the end of the exhalation. And when you're ready to breathe in, just use that in-breath to help you lift your head. And you're going to come onto your front side. And you're going to take your feet to the outer edges of the mat so that your small toes align with the outermost edge of your mat. And then stretch your arms forward so your hands are kind of right in front of the front corners of your mat. Turning your fingers out 45 degrees. Your arms are straight. We're going to come into a big wide seal pose. So just try to really press your small toes down, press your hands into the floor, and just bring your chest slightly away from the floor. Keep rolling weight to these small toes. You can close your eyes, and I'm going to have you take your chin to your chest. We're keeping pressure in the hands, keeping the small toes anchored to the outermost points of your mat, keeping the chin tucked into the chest. We're going to stay about 10 breaths. Restorative practice is more about bone and organs, less about stretching muscle. And we put good stress on the bones, on the joints. About 3 more breaths. We'll just soften those actions. We're going to either prop the hips with a couple of blankets, or if you own a bolster, that's going to be great. So either a bolster under your hips or 2 folded blankets. And the folded blankets should be the kind of the narrow version so that they're thicker. And you're going to go back into that position with your feet once you have your hips propped and elevated with that cushion. So the small toes again are trying to stay anchored to the corners of your mat. And this time your elbows are going to be a little bit bent, so your arms aren't as forward as they just were. So your hands, instead of in front of the corners of the mat, they are going to be behind those corners, so they're still on the mat. Fingers are turned out. And again, you're going to pressurize your hands. You're coming off the floor and you have the elevation of the support. So you're in a deeper pose, but it's supported. Keep working with the small toe action, winding the inner thighs up, the small toes down. And then enough pressure in your hands, your shoulders are not confused. They're definitely going down. They're not climbing into your ears. And then a nice neutral kind of bowing head position. So let the head go. So if you ever have low back, kind of nagging, aching low back, this is a really good one to soothe the low back. Usually the cause of low back stress or strain is too much forward flexion. So this is good supported extension. And just enough effort that you're holding wise actions, but you're not trying to overdo it at all. Quieting the brain. About 5 more breaths here. Now start to release the effort of the legs and the feet. Walk your hands in toward your cushion and press yourself back to child's pose. Make sure your knees are wide, your feet can come together. You can use your bolster for your head if you like, or take your head down and sit back in child's pose. And just notice how soothing this pose is. So simple, so soothing, pretty effortless. You're going to come forward and you can leave your bolster or blankets there. We are going to do a head supported dog in a little bit, so you can leave it kind of ready for you. And bring your knees in hip distance and curl your toes underneath. And then sit back. So your head won't be supported anymore, but you're just trying to bring a little bit of openness to the bottoms of the feet. You have full control here. So if it feels overwhelming, pull your weight forward. And if you need more, you can send the hips back toward the heels. And we do tend to roll out toward the small toes here to kind of avoid sensation. So just kind of magnetize your inner heels toward each other, but not to the point of torture, of course. Just turning that dial up until you have some sensation. The mind is occupied. It's always a good sign that we're in a good version of the pose for ourselves. And just a few deep breaths. Tension in the feet is kind of the unsung hero of our tension. We all carry it, and yet we don't really address it as often as we should. So now we're going to attempt to come up into downward dog, but what I want you to do is not move your hips forward. So it's a little bit of a challenge. You're going to pressurize your hands, keep your hips back, and start to extend the legs. And you're not going to straighten your legs fully. So keep your knees bent. Good. And if the hips need to come forward to get up, of course you have to do that, but just doing your best to keep the hips back. So once the knees are bent, you're going to try to bring your chest as close to your thighs as they will go with your knees bent. And then you're going to let yourself come forward with the hips so that you find your straight leg that's not yanking on your back. And you're just going to play in this little zone that we've established here. The straight leg kind of plank, half dog, half plank, and then the bent knee, chest and thighs coming close together. Let's take exhale when you're bending knees. Inhale when you're straightening the legs and moving forward. And you're just going to do about 8 of these. Exhale, the knees bend and we come chest to thighs. And then inhale, we straighten the legs by moving the hips forward, kind of as if we're moving into plank, but you're not going to go into a full plank. Okay, so do a few more of those on your own. And really just letting the breath lead or set that natural rhythm. Exhaling, sitting back. Inhaling, pulling forward just enough to straighten the legs. Three more. Keep magnetizing the inner heels toward each other. And the next time you sit back, you can lower your knees, turn the toes back out, and come back to child's pose. You can rest your forehead on your bolster, on your hands, your fists, the floor. And now we're going to transition to head supported downward facing dog. So if you know you need more than the blanket stack or the bolster you have, you can build up height. You can always use a block. So any combination of your props that will support your head. And the resting point is really close to the hairline so that the neck is nice and aligned with the rest of the spine. And I usually recommend a little bit of a longer dog so that the head can come down easily without having to distort the pose. So you might step your hands forward kind of in front of the shoulder line, and you might also support your wrists a little bit by turning your fingers out so that your thumbs point forward. Take the toes under and exhale, come up. And you might still need some of that knee bend. So just listen and respond and create a pose that's sustainable, not only for the body, but for the brain. So watch your mind, your thoughts. If your brain starts to flitter away, it's usually a sign something's off with the pose. Something's not working for us. We're going to try to hold for 10 slow, steady breaths. Lifting your hips away from your shoulders to support the weight bearing that you're doing. And think about carrying that weight that you're pulling from your wrists to your hips and letting it just flow down the other side, down the legs, into the heels. The heels might start to descend. Let your shoulder blades move in toward your chest. Keep rolling those inner thighs back. Keeping your legs compact. Pressurize the legs from front to back, the shin bones, the thigh bones. Good pressure on the arm bones, good stress for the arm bones. And now as you're ready, come back to child's pose one last time. This time, we're going to take the pose sideways. And so the knees should be separated again. We're going to move the head support away because once we go over one of our thighs, we probably won't reach that support anyway. So just move your prop out of your way, stretch your arms forward, and start to walk your arms to the right. Bring your chest up over and on top of that right thigh. And aligning your head between your arms, which are shoulder distance apart. Make sure your head is just passive, like you're bowing, your ears start to move into the space between the arms. And give a little extra emphasis to your left small toe, anchoring back to the floor. Your left hip drifting away from your left shoulder. And the left side body becoming more elastic. And as you get a signal that you would like a little bit more sensation, keep walking to the right. We're going to stay about 5 or 6 breaths here. Slow, steady breaths. Really good pressure and compaction for your right hip. Give that a little attention and a little breath before we come out. And then on an in-breath, you're just going to start to creep your fingertips back to the center and continue over to the left. Clearing enough space with your torso coming up so that you can really align your chest evenly over that left thigh. Try to grip the floor with your right small toe. Resist that right hip away from the shoulder, even though it wants to follow. And create that big expansive space to the right side body, but also think about your spine having this beautiful lateral movement, crescent shape. And connect the dots in your mind's eye of your tailbone all the way to your crown. Giving a little love, a little breath to your left hip joint. Going a little bit beyond where you are, if that feels like a good thing to do, and just a couple more breaths. And use an inhale to extend your way back to center. Lengthen back to center. And then creeping yourself upright. We're going to transition onto our backs now. And we're going to do a series of supported Padangusthasana, hand to big toe poses. And we're going to basically be cradling the hips. So I want you to have 2 folded blankets that are kind of the narrow version of your blanket, whatever you're using. And they're going to run lengthwise alongside you and tucked underneath the outer hips and buttocks. So you should feel like you're in a little bit of a bowl or a cradle. So it's not like you're flat underneath your buttocks. You want to wedge them kind of under half of your butt. And there's nothing too specific about where they sit. Just make sure you're propping the hips and buttocks, and otherwise don't worry about what the blankets are doing the rest of the way, either above or below. And before you get too settled, you're going to want to make a small loop with your strap, a loop that can basically hold your foot. So once you have the loop, you can just slip it over your right foot. And then if you need a little head support, I know we've used up our blankets, but if you have another blanket, you could support your head that way. Otherwise, you could always roll your mat a little bit to improvise so that your head has the support it needs. What we don't want to see is the chin kind of wagging in the air and shortening the back of the neck. So prop your head if you need to, so that the neck remains kind of aligned and smooth. Once you're reclined, really take a moment to adjust those blankets so you feel cradled. It should feel very soothing to the lower back. So you may not know what you're really looking for, but if you're starting to feel very soothed in your lower back, that's a good sign that you've set those blankets up in a nice way. Okay, so the right foot has the belt. And now we're going to run the strap behind the neck from right to left. And your left hand will hold the strap and your left arm extends as well as it can to the left, perpendicular from the torso. The right hand will hold close to the foot. And then you're going to slowly just allow your leg to move out to the right. And the blanket is acting like a stopper. So we're not going to be thinking so much about hamstrings and calf muscles. Really think about your sacrum staying evenly anchored to the floor. In another class, we might be really active with left leg. Today, just have that left leg be heavy, passive, and keep your chin tilted down toward your chest. If you need to bend your right knee, by all means, bend your right knee. We're not going to be super concerned with stretching the inner thigh, the hamstring. Think about this as opening joints, putting good pressure on left sacrum, quieting the brain. Shoulder girdles should be somewhat evenly pressurized against the floor. Hips. And about 5 more slow, steady breaths. And now we're going to use an exhale. Keep your leg really anchored to the floor as you carry it back to center. We're going to go the other direction with the strap now running from left to right behind the neck. So just swap the strap out. So you're running left to right. This time the right arm extends out to the side and the left hand climbs up the strap close to the foot, just for some guidance and for additional guidance there. But you're really trying to counter support this pose by reaching through that right arm, keeping yourself kind of counterbalanced. And now, so that we don't go kind of dumping all our weight to the left, just imagine your right butt cheek is Velcro to the floor, and just start to pass the right leg gently, slowly to the left. The idea is not to rip the Velcro. The idea is to keep all that Velcro attached to the floor and to create resistance that way. So this isn't the revolving version. This is just a nice opportunity to keep the sacrum really anchored evenly, to stretch the outer hip and buttock. Feel some good movement in the hip. And again, keep your chin kind of gently snuggling in toward the collarbones. The gaze is soft, or your eyes might be closed. Your knee is bent if it needs to be. This isn't the class that we're concerned about a fully extended leg. Whatever you need to do to keep the breath smooth and steady. Checking in with the breath is one of the quickest ways to determine if you're in a good pose for yourself. If the breath is compromised, usually the pose is off. So after this exhalation, move your leg to center. And now we're going to take both arms overhead with our fists stacking one above the other. It doesn't matter which. Your arms are straight and as well on the floor as you can get them to be. And you're going to tilt your chin down. Again, you might need some bend in your right knee. That's fine. And just kind of enjoy how balanced this pose feels, how supported it feels. Things are kind of working in harmony here. Keep your gaze pointed toward your cheeks. And of course, if a straight leg does work for you, by all means, straighten your leg. Three more breaths. Now start to bend your left knee so you can place the sole of the left foot on the floor. And we're going to be just taking the loop over to the left foot. So you'll have to take it off the right, step the right foot down, take the loop onto the left foot, and then you can extend your right leg. And we're going to be running the strap from left to right. So the right arm will reach out to the side, strap in hand. Left arm climbs up the strap. The leg is straight or bent, whatever your starting point is. Find your balanced lower back. We're going to use the blankets that are cradling us to keep that sense of balance. Exhale, start to move your leg slowly to the left. Attempt to keep your shoulders evenly planted on the floor. And we're just kind of looking for that point in the pose where we feel balanced. We feel really conservative with our efforts. We feel or sense the brain is quiet and present. And this is totally different than feeling complacent. When we're complacent, the mind wanders. So when I teach here, I always have this wall here, and it's actually really nice to have that there. I could go farther, but I'm getting really good support here. And if you don't have the wall, you're trying to, in essence, achieve that same effect. So when we're in these poses in integrity, we can rise above the weather. It's one way we can tell that we're in the right pose is that we are just enjoying that here and now sensate experience. We're not caught up in the whirling of the mind. We're just present. So keeping track of where the left leg meets the floor, use that fulcrum, guide your leg back to center, and switch the strap so it runs from right to left, and your left arm extends sideways. And your right hand will assist, just kind of crawling up the strap, but not in a way that the shoulder comes 10 feet from the floor. So keep your right shoulder dropping into the floor. And imagining your left butt cheek is velcroed to the floor. Just start to move the leg softly to the right. And that right-sided blanket stopper is preventing you from rolling the hips. So keep the hips and the sacrum really level. Soothing the internal organs. Each breath is a gentle massage, bathing those organs in prana, life force, energy, however you want to translate prana. There's a few translations. Your gaze should be softened toward your cheeks, chin tilted toward your chest. Right leg is passive. Each time you exhale, you detox, and you can think about that in a very scientific way. You could also think about it as letting go of something that ties up your energy, ties up your thoughts, ties up your mind. So every exhale is a chance to let go. Those things that tie us down, that keep us kind of under the weather. So we're going to transition the leg to center. And then we're going to be taking the arms overhead, stacking the fists, and basically just finding that balance where your arms extending are supporting the closest version of your legs, of your left leg. Your right leg is passive. Your chin tilted down. And the breath smooth and steady. Coming right up to that physical edge where we're not bored and we're not overwhelmed. Keeping a sense of overall softness in your face. Let the flesh of your face descend from the hairline all the way to the chin. And now you're going to help your right foot find the floor by bending the knee. Take the strap off of your left foot. Move your strap aside. And then take your blankets away from the sides. And extend your legs. We'll come into Banana Asana. And once your legs are extended, you can slide both feet to the right. Reach your arms overhead and interlock your hands and take both hands to the right. And then pick up your left foot and cross your left ankle over your right ankle. And try to keep the left hip down. So we're not trying to rotate the hips or the pelvis. They should be level. Taking it as far as you need to get enough sensation. Shifting farther to the right if you start to kind of lose that right amount of sensation. About 5 more breaths here. Just feel, see if you can sense the body really wants to open. You're going to help yourself out of it so that we can transition to the other side. So stepping the ankle, the foot back down. Start to shift your limbs just to center first. You can change the interlock of your hands. Move the legs to the left. Slide your interlocked hands to the left. And then cross your right ankle over your left ankle. And once you've set it up, see if you can then really let go. Soften your body. Receive the breaths. Do away with any unnecessary effort. And if it becomes too dull, you know what to do. Keep moving your limbs to the left. help yourself gently release the pose. And take both knees, bend the knees, put the soles of the feet to the edges of your mat. Try to align the outer edges of your feet with the edges of the mat. Move your hands onto your belly and let both knees fall to the right and your head falls to the left, and you're going to stay there. A lot of times we move back and forth quickly. Just keeping knees to the right. So you should be on the outer right foot, the inner left foot. Your feet are wide. Your head is off to the left. And just take enough time that you can fully surrender. You can receive a few breaths. Your spine is getting this really great, juicy twist. On the in-breath, move your knees and head center, and then let the knees drop to the left and your head roll to the right. And stay about 5 or 6 breaths here. And then you can inhale to center and help yourself to either side. We're going to set up Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. So we're going to need 2 blocks, a strap, and 1 blanket to support your head and shoulders. So you can set the blanket up in an opened up kind of shape so that it'll be big enough for your head and your shoulders. We want the head and the shoulders to have the same amount of height, to be on the same plane. And this isn't really necessary, it's just for comfort. So it's not really for elevation, but it is nice to have. And then the loop that you made for your foot, you can just make it bigger. It will be to keep our legs held together so that we don't have to really squeeze and grip and create tension. We can really take a passive version of this pose. And you're going to put that belt around your thighs, anywhere between your knees and your hips. We all have different shaped legs, so whatever works for you, just not right over the knees, not great for the knees. And you want to really feel that the legs are snug. And then you'll put your 2 blocks. One is next to your hips, and then one is going to be under your heels. So you can put your heel block kind of at the end of the mat, either on the low setting or the medium. But whatever you do with one block, you're going to have the same height with the other. So you need to make sure you're kind of keeping that idea. You're going to come onto your head and shoulders. Don't elevate the feet until you've elevated the hips, because it's not good for the back. So your feet are just on the floor. You'll take your block and find what height is best for you today. It might be the medium setting under the sacrum. You're going horizontally with the broadness of that bony plate. And then whatever you did there, you're going to try to use the dexterity of your feet to create a matching height for your foot block. You're going to rest your heels on that foot block. So it takes a little bit of finagling. Once you've set it up, you want to take a moment to really move the wrists kind of closer together and press the outer upper arms down to get the chest to lift. So there is action going on in this pose. The chin hugging the chest and the tailbone making its way toward the ceiling. The toes above the heels. The inner thighs rolling down. The gaze toward your cheeks. Do your best to keep the abdomen moving toward the lower back and the tailbone moving toward the ceiling. So this pose requires effort. That's part of it. but find the places in the pose that you can soften, you can be passive. The jaw is one of those places. The gaze, the throat, the tongue, the flesh of the forehead, the buttocks. And for the next 8 breaths, just ride the waves of your breath as if you're in a tiny little vessel, tiny little boat. And each breath is a unique wave that you're experiencing in real time. You're in that boat, on that wave. And now help your feet down to the floor, bend the knees. Turn your block to its lowest setting, maybe you're already there. And then take your legs out of the strap. And keeping your back on your block, let your chest and thighs come together. So you're in an elevated, supported, reclining child's pose. And then extending your arms overhead with your palms facing up. Imagine you have little guy lines, like tethers. If you've ever put a tent up with a rain fly, there's like tethers that keep it connected with the earth. So just extending little guy lines out of your fingernails to whatever wall is out beyond the fingernails. Keeping the knees as bent as you need. Start to extend your feet up and try to keep the thighs as close to the chest as they were. So very similar to what we did with downward dog today. We're less concerned about a straight leg. We're more focused on the chest and thighs remaining close and the lower back remaining anchored. Chin hugging chest. We're going to stay for 8 breaths. The internal organs are bathing in prana. They're soft, they're supported. Really let those exhales take those thighs toward your chest. We'll do 3 more. And after that 3rd one, just let the feet come back toward the buttocks. Let your feet then come down to the floor one at a time. And then use your hands to help yourself off the block. You take the block out of the way. And just take a moment with feet wide, knees together, hands on your belly. Just receiving any residuals. The rush that comes into the body when we release a fist. And just like on Monday, we're not going to do a particular pranayama practice today. We're going to be just listening to breath and noticing breath. So we're going to come into coherent breathing exercise, which is a modern day technique. It's not really a technique, it's a modern day exercise. A lot of people in the police force use to keep the nervous system quiet. So it's really just listening to your breath. And I have some bell tones that I've brought my speaker out for today that you're not going to try to align your breath with, but they gently guide in a subconscious way. They guide your breath to a very slow, steady rhythm. And so you're going to set up for Shavasana, taking any support you need, making sure the lights are dim, you're warm enough, that you have eye support if your eyes don't like shutting without support, if you're squeezing them shut, use some support. And anything behind the knees you need, like a bolster or a blanket. So yoga, we always address the physical tension before we even start to work with breath, because the breath is so influenced by the body. So it's best to practice asana before you work with your breath so that you're prepared. Before we start, I'm just have one more reading. Worship does not mean offering flowers. It means offering your heart to the vast mystery of the universe. It means letting your heart pulse with the life of the universe, without thought and without reservation. It means being so in love that you are willing to dissolve and be recreated in every moment. So as you hear the bell tones, there's a high note and a low note. And again, you're not trying to align your breath with these tones, but do think about the lower tone as an exhale and the higher tone as an inhale. Observing your own breath and taking in the sound of the tones at the same time. start to lower the sound and just be with your own breath now. Riding those waves of breath with your attention, your own rhythm. No agenda, just honoring whatever breath is here. Noticing the worlds of the mind, the fluctuations of thought. Notice and release. Just come back to the breath. The breath flows out with the sound sa. The breath flows in with the sound ha. Thus thousands of times a day. Know this and be in great joy. Listen to the ongoing prayer that is breath. Life shall dance in you, a dance of ever renewing delight. Give yourself a moment to draw yourself out of the pose with a few deeper breaths and some simple small movement. Letting your hands move on to your chest or your belly. Letting your knees bend, soles of the feet sliding onto the floor. And then easing yourself to one side. And moving at the speed of presence from side lying, find your way to seated, slowly and gently. Making this transition from our mats to the rest of our day off of our mats as a smooth segue, more cohesive. We'll join our hands together in front of the heart. Soften the face. Maybe even smile. And let's take a deep breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.